So right there, I have changed outcomes. I have changed my genetics. I have changed what could have happened to me. Everyone had heart disease, high blood pressure. I'm going to tell you, I'm 53 years old.
Really?
Yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Healing Hands Chiropractic Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Dawkins, and I'm here with the legend, Dr. Tracy Rush, who just finished her workout, but you would never know, except for she's in incredible shape. Dr. Tracy, how you doing this morning?
I'm great. It's gorgeous. It's November 1st.
We officially made it, which begs the question. I'm excited about what we're going to get into today, just so folks know right off the bat. We're going to get into the heart of prevention. We're going to talk about the value of education. We're going to get into the weeds of epigenetics and why Dr. Tracy's so passionate about educating. But first, Dr. Tracy, we have to answer the question that everybody's asking, and that is it officially time to decorate for Christmas? Your thoughts?
No, it's still fall. Thanksgiving hasn't happened.
Agree to disagree. My tree is literally coming down the stairs as we speak, and my crew cannot wait to put that tree up. So, hey, if you're listening and you have a strong opinion on it, make sure you comment below. Let us know. Do you wait till after Thanksgiving, or are you already decorated? Where do you fall on the spectrum? Let us know as we're getting into this conversation. But Dr. Tracy, the heart of this conversation is we are sort of piggybacking on a workshop that you guys did. If you wouldn't mind just taking maybe 60 seconds to unpack that workshop, just kind of the summary, the notes of the why do you feel like that was an important workshop to do? Give us a little bit of context before we get into, I've got 7 questions for you today.
So the class came about because it was October, and that's Cancer Month. So that's why it came about, because preventative things we can do to not necessarily combat cancer, but give us the best fighting chance. That's the best way I can say it. And so a lot of research was done. I mean, hours and hours of articles and things that I've read to come up with that class. And that is on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page as well.
And we have the power to do this, Dr. Tracy. Watch it here. Click this button right here, and you can watch that workshop in its entirety. So that we're not redundant, Dr. Tracy, I don't necessarily want to just rehash that entire workshop, but what I do want to do is get into the heart of prevention and talk about why it matters so much to you. So I think it was at the top of the workshop you mentioned the story about your aunt, and I'd love for you just to give us that story if you could, and then talk about why you say, that's a little bit of your why behind the heart of education and going down this path of helping people on this journey. Talk a little bit about that.
So she wasn't a blood relative, but she was the first family member that I had encountered that had cancer. And so she was a hairdresser. I actually worked for her. I was her shampoo girl and did nails at her shop. So that was what I did growing up. But lovely, lovely lady as far as just a heart of gold. And she had married my uncle, which was my mom's brother. And they had gotten divorced, but she was still my aunt. And she had been in a car accident, a really bad car accident. And a couple years later, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was like, wow, that's the first, again, exposure I had to any type of cancer in my family. And so I watched her struggle, see what she went through as she fought through that. And she fought it. I mean, breast cancer was gone until a couple of years later that it had metastasized to her bones, to her lymph nodes, and within a year she had passed. And it was heartbreaking. So she was probably, I'm going to say, late 50s, early 60s that she had passed. And it was just so sad to see that progression of her life.
Man, yeah, so I can understand how something like that could stick with you and even motivate you. One of the things that you say in the workshop is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I know that you believe that education is one of the keys to prevention. I want you to talk a little bit about why, continuing education and you continuing to be on your journey of learning matters so much, even, and I know that you mentioned that a lot of what we know and what we're learning, it sort of goes against what we're hearing from some of the larger, more established healthcare systems in our country. Talk a little bit about that.
So I just have to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Who said that originally?
Yeah, who said that?
Benjamin Franklin.
All right.
So that's a history thing. I didn't know that.
Wow.
So I liken the story of the starfish. So you're a gentleman walking on the beach, and there's thousands of starfish, and he's throwing them back one by one. This little kid is throwing them back one by one. And so this gentleman comes up to him and says, "You're not making a difference." And he says, "Well, for this one, I am." Throwing it back into the ocean. And so our stories, or my story and education, we're changing one life. We're changing two lives. We're changing that small sphere of influence that can have ripple effects later on. And that's why, even though medical communities and other establishments and drug companies are like this, and this, and I'm like, no, why don't we build our immune system up? Why don't we work on that? Why do we have to wait until we're sick? Prevention. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we live in a world that is always looking for the quick fix, right? When you think of cure, you think of a pill or a shot or something you can take and it's taken care of, versus prevention is the work, right? Prevention is the work that we need to do in order to not have to put ourselves in a position to need a cure. So let's get personal, Dr. Tracy. I want to hear from you. The people want to hear from you. What is the work that you're committed to doing personally, committed to that ounce of prevention, right? That you're on your journey so that you never have to put yourself in a position where you've got to seek out a cure because you stayed on the road in the journey of the ounce of prevention. Let's get personal.
So the first thing is, I'm the only one in my family that doesn't smoke or didn't smoke. Everybody smoked in my family. Grandparents, aunt, uncle, my brother, my parents. My dad quit later on in life, and so he had been smoke-free for 20 plus years, but I was the only one. So right there, I have changed outcomes. I have changed my genetics. I have changed what could have happened to me. Everyone had heart disease, high blood pressure. I'm going to tell you, I'm 53 years old.
Really?
Yes. And I'm not on blood pressure medication. My whole entire family had been on blood pressure medication really early in their 40s. So I've already changed the outcomes by the choices I've made. And then knowing, educating, because I was in an environment that I can learn about healthy things, because I didn't know about them. I didn't grow up with it.
Well, that's impressive and that's amazing. I think that sort of shines a light on a big word that you used in the workshop that we really do need to talk about and unpack. That word is epigenetics. I've got a quote from you right here. You said, "Our choices, what we eat, how we live, can actually turn on or off genes linked to diseases like cancer." I feel like that is a massive statement, because we're talking about genetics, epigenetics, talking about prevention. You got to help me connect the dots, Dr. Tracy. How does that work, and help us understand that better?
So I had my DNA done a couple of years back. I'm going to say 7 years back. Had my DNA done, and I'm reading my DNA, what I am supposed to have. First thing was heart disease, obviously. Second was diabetes. No one in my family has diabetes. Well, diabetes happens when our body our insulin can't shoot, our body can't shoot enough insulin to counteract the sugars that are in our body. So obviously what we eat can turn on that gene or turn off that gene. So I have the gene that's for diabetes. I don't have diabetes because I've made choices to make sure I'm keeping those things off. That's throughout the majority of our genes in our body, is that we can make those choices to turn them on or turn them off.
Okay. Hey, listen, maybe you heard it here first. I'm just thinking about how many people like to have something else to blame, right? That they want to blame the system. I want to blame the farmers. I want to blame the monster in the machine. That gives us some responsibility. That ultimately, that means that we have homework, right? That we have work that we have to do. As we're talking about an ounce of prevention. You are an incredible educator. I think you've said it to me a couple times. Doctor means teacher. Doctor means educator. That you're committed to educating. And in 20 plus years of educating, you've had a chance to turn the ship for a lot of individuals. I'm curious if you could, just for a few minutes, talk about some of the advice, some of the knowledge, wisdom that you have imparted to your patients that you feel like has made the biggest difference in helping patients transform their lives, especially when it comes to the ounce of prevention.
So showing up, being engaged, that's number one. So I'll have patients that will tell me, I'll never get well. You're right. You'll never get well. I can't counteract what you're saying and the chemicals you are creating by saying that. I can't counteract that. Our mind is powerful. The chemicals in our body are powerful. So showing up and being willing to make those changes in your life. I mean, is there just one thing? No, because it's a cumulative thing that's going to build on each other. We don't just arrive, I'm here. No, it's a journey. And we can keep getting better. So if you're hopeless and think, gosh, I'm stuck in this place, you can change that. You can make, again, those choices. Always comes down to choice. And change the trajectory and the path you're going down. And that's what we do. We give people hope that they can go down a different path.
It's, I was just talking with a friend yesterday about how a lot of times when we experience transformation, if we do it right, the greatest change happens here. Right? That sometimes we lose 10 pounds, or sometimes we've corrected our posture, or sometimes we've, beat some sickness or illness or disease. But the truth is, if we do it right, and this is where folks like you who live inside of the healthcare system to truly help people are making, I think, probably the greatest impact is you're helping people transform here. You're to your point, a lot of times we can experience a physical transformation, but mentally and emotionally, we can still be holding ourselves back, or we can still see ourselves in that former state. I'm wondering what other kind of challenges you face when you're working to communicate, hey, essentially, do this if you want to have a better life. Do this if you don't just want to live longer, but want to be healthy longer. What are some of the challenges that you face, and how do you overcome those? We just talked about a few. I'm wondering if there's any more that you can allude to that you deal with on a regular basis.
So, like you said, we're always educating. So when a patient comes into our office, we ask them a question. Whatever we have, it's called a whiteboard. So each week we have a different question on our whiteboard that stimulates their mind about healthy living or something to that effect. So this past week what are the risks associated with diabetes? Because this month is a diabetes month. And so the question, okay, what are the risks? Well, you've got eye issues, you have heart issues, you have circulation issues, all those things where I never stop. It just comes out of me. So it's not that, you've arrived. It's those little things, because we have to reprogram. Because people, I mean, when I was younger, before I found chiropractic, I was programmed when I have a migraine or a headache, I'm going to take an ibuprofen. That's what I was programmed to do because that's what the doctor told me to do. I had to reprogram my body. I had to reprogram my mind to make a different choice. And just do the research. Read. You're going to find positive and negative on anything, but read.
You've obviously learned a lot over the last 20 plus years as someone who's committed to continuing to educate yourself. We've talked about educating others. We've talked about helping others overcome their challenges. We've talked about turning the ship for other people. How about you, just as we bring this conversation to a close today, what would you say are some of the most insightful, important lessons that you've learned over the years, even whether it's as of late or you just had those moments over the course of the 20 years where you're like, light bulb, that means things need to change in the way that I educate others, the way that I help other people. Do you have any of those lessons that you can share with us?
Well, I say that God has guided me. When God found me and I found God, I'm trying to think, my son's 28 years ago. That was a transformation. I mean, that changed my life, changed the direction I was going in. And so, Holy Spirit, that inner voice talks to you. We got to listen. Are we listening? Are we hearing it? Are we acting on it? I'll hear it, and sometimes I won't act on it. You know, oh, that cake looks so good. Just one piece of candy. We just had Halloween, so one piece of candy. One turns into two. Are we listening to that voice? So God's guidance, yes, the leading of the Holy Spirit is number one in my life. And then knowing that the body heals. Like, we have the ability to heal. We don't have to think about our healing. We just got to give it the right tools to heal. And that's going to change your destiny.
Wow. I love that. I don't know why. It just hit me a little different when you used the word knowing that the body heals. You know, I was taught early on in the process of my education that you don't really know something until you have to teach it. And sometimes you can attest to this, that it's in the process of preparing to educate others on something where we truly can say that we know it. That you don't just educate, you actually encounter that truth every time you are with a patient, every time that you're with a crowd, even with your family, that you're living proof that that statement is true, that the body can heal itself. And so I want to challenge our listeners as we get ready to sign off. Again, there's power in this idea that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we can own our part in prevention, if we can be willing to do our homework, we can be willing to do our research. But I will tell you this, that it won't be until you become an ambassador of health. If you can take the conversation like the one we're having right now, and you can think about the people in your life that you love, the people in your life who have been affected by illness or disease, and you can help them begin to take ownership of their homework and the research that they should be doing. You can invite them into a conversation like this. This is when we begin to change our world. So, Dr. Tracy, thank you again for making time for continuing the conversation. We're getting into the holidays. It's finally getting colder. I want to leave people with an opportunity to comment below. What is your favorite thing about the month of November? You got a lot of options. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Dr. Tracy, you're going to answer this before we sign off. What's your favorite thing about November?
Favorite thing? I love the trees. I mean, the trees are incredible right now. The colors, and then just watching them fall is so peaceful. We don't slow down. We don't slow down. We got to just watch it. We're coming into our hibernation time and being honoring to ourselves and just watch it fall down, and then new life will come in the spring. But this is the dying off, and then we know what's going to happen.
Yes. And with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you on the next conversation.
Blessings.